welcome everybody to today. We're covering the do's and don'ts of social media. So thanks so much for being here. Right now you're hearing from Oh My Digital. So we are a digital marketing agency based here in Brizzy, and we work with clients all around Australia to help them nail their digital marketing. And while a lot of those guys outsource to us, we're really big on empowering people to DIY. Particularly social media as well, because it is such a valuable tool when you can learn to get comfortable with it and use it yourself. So that's why we're really excited to be here today, and we really hope you guys take away a lot of value. So we'll get into some introductions and then we'll get right into the good stuff. So just to introduce myself and why I'm here today, my name is Katie. So I'm one co-founder of Oh My Digital. I've got a Bachelor of Business majoring in marketing and PR, and I've worked in this industry for a bit over 6 years now. At Oh My Digital, I really focus in on our content side of things, so social media content, anything involved with writing or coming up with creative fun ideas. That's what I love. And I do work with more of our service-based businesses as well. Fun fact about me is that I love food. So I'll pass over to Hayley now to introduce herself as well.
Hi, I'm Hayley. I'm the other half of Oh My Digital, and I've had about 10 years experience in the industry. I'm the advertising side of Oh My Digital. I do a lot of our Facebook ads, and my love is retail and e-commerce, and I'm a dog mum, and that's basically my entire persona. So I am absolutely obsessed with dogs and horror movies as well.
Love it. Yes, we're both definitely dog people. Cool. So just really quickly before we jump into today, I also just want to quickly introduce you guys to our co-hosts that you'll be hearing from a little bit later on. So Adriana and Riz. Adriana, did you want to quickly just intro a couple of words about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Adriana. I'm the Chief Marketing and Client Relations Officer at Holman Webb. The sun's just come up here, so I'm coming through the window here, so I'm going to have to fix that. But yeah, we're an emerging mid-tier firm. We have been very active in terms of social media for a long time now. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of our war stories with you later today.
Amazing. Really excited to hear from your perspective as well, Adriana, and give everyone some, real world examples. That would be awesome. And Riz from Found Legal, did you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. My name's Riz McDonald. I'm the founder and director of Found Legal. I started my business back in September 2019, and I've rode the roller coaster storm that was COVID. And I hope to talk to you today about my experiences with growing my business through socials.
Yes, thanks, Riz. Awesome. So what to expect for today, we will be covering a little bit of the theory in the beginning. So that's just our do's and don'ts of social media. So you guys can get across that. We have about 7 or so to share with you. But then we really want to give you guys some practical takeaways as well. So we will be having a few different real world examples from your peers. And time permitting, we also wanted to finish with a little bit of a content brainstorming session at the end, so that you guys can actually walk away with some ideas on what to post and give those things a try. So if you do have any questions throughout today's session, you can use the Q&A feature on your screen, or you can drop questions in the chat box, and we'll either get back to you on there, or again, if we have time at the end, we'll come back and answer some of those awesome questions as well. So yeah, really looking forward to sharing this with you today, and thanks for being here, and we'll get into it. All right, so one thing that we really want to drive home today, I think one huge challenge that is a roadblock for a lot of people with social media is there's a million different platforms, and a lot of people feel a lot of pressure to be everywhere at once. So if you take away one thing from today, we just really want to say to you, don't give into that pressure. Just think about where your ideal clients are and what's relevant for you, and then really hone in on that, even if it's just 1 or 2 key channels that you can really focus on. So right now, before we dive into today, we're actually going to help you define what those channels are for you. So just going to spend 2 minutes. I want you guys to write down somewhere in front of you, just thinking about your ideal client, what's their age range, maybe their gender, if that's relevant, and what are their interests? You know, what kind of media do they like consuming? What kind of things do they like to know about? Are they into The Bachelor? What are their interests? What do they love reading about online? Write a couple of notes on that down. And then I also want you guys to note down really your number one priority or your goal of even being on social media, okay? So this will be a bit different for everyone, but try to pick the one that's most important for you for where you're at, you know, in your business or in your career right now. So is it brand awareness for your firm? Do you need more people to know who you are? Is it building relationships with people? So actually people that might work with you in the longer term? Or is it lead generation? Do you need to actually get new clients in the door right now? So which one's your number one priority? Who's your ideal client? Write those things down. I'll give you guys one more minute. And then Hayley's going to jump in and show you guys which platforms might be worth actually concentrating on today. All right, that should hopefully be long enough. You guys hopefully have a bit of an idea off the top of your head. And if you don't, it's okay. You can keep thinking about it and you can come back to this. You guys are going to get a recording, I'm pretty sure anyways. So you'll have this to come back to later on. But I'll hand over to Hayley now, and she's going to run you guys through some of the major platforms we're across at the moment and which ones might be right for you.
Absolutely. So as you know, there are a lot of different social media platforms that you could be focusing on, and it can be difficult to know which ones you actually should be focusing on and which are actually going to be right for your business. So once you know what your goals are and what your audience is actually interested in, you can actually sort of nail down exactly where you should be focusing your energy. So for example, if you know that you have a sort of younger audience and they tend to be more skewed towards females, then you can sort of look at the Instagram platform. But if you know that your audience aren't really hanging out there, aren't spending their time there, then don't even bother with the platform, because not everyone needs to be on Instagram and it doesn't work for every business. So you really should be focusing your energy where you're actually going to get the most return for your business. LinkedIn works for some businesses really well, and it doesn't work for other businesses as well. And as you know, for LinkedIn, it works more for personal profiles than it does for company profiles. So if you've got a really strong personal profile, you've got some really great connections, LinkedIn can work really, really well for you on a personal level as well. We've also got Twitter, which can work really well as well if you've got a really great network. In some countries, it can perform better than others. For example, overseas in the States, it works really well. It works a little bit better than Australia, but in some industries, it can work a little bit better as well. Then, you know, for example, the social media world, it's working particularly well right now. So if you know that your audience is hanging out there, Twitter can be a really great place to start a conversation and to have some really real and raw conversations. YouTube is another place where you can add some real value and have some really long form educational pieces of video. And that can be a really great place to actually reach your ideal demographic if you know that they're hiding out there as well. So I haven't touched over Facebook yet, and there's a reason for that. So the reason I haven't touched over Facebook yet is it can be a bit of a fickle platform. And it's whether you know that your audience are still hanging out there. And you can generally find that out by having a look at your insights and actually having a look at whether the platform is still active for you and whether it's still performing as well as maybe it used to. That's something that you can sort of have a look at and do a mini audit every sort of 6 months and see whether you're still getting the results that you used to, because the algorithm can sort of play tricks on you a little bit with Facebook. So just keep an eye on that and see whether your audience is still hanging out on Facebook quite regularly and see whether it's something that can still potentially work well for you. TikTok is something that I probably wouldn't recommend in the lawyer sort of space unless you're particularly targeting a younger demographic, because unless you're doing sort of educational video that is highly entertaining, you're not going to get the cut through that you would on some of the other platforms. And we've left Clubhouse without any real demographic information just yet because it's too new to actually have any of that information available, any real statistics or data that we can actually focus in on just yet. But we know that it's a real platform to watch out for because it is really interesting and it is definitely one to watch. Some really great conversations are being had, and some of the lawyers that we know are really paving the way on Clubhouse at the moment to make a real difference. So it is definitely a platform to watch, and it can be one that we think is going to make a real difference to potential audiences in the future, and businesses can make a real mark on that platform as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hayley. And yeah, hopefully looking at this slide, even if you come back to it in the recording later, you can start to match up and see, okay, I know who my ideal client is, I know the kind of content they're interested in, I know what my goals are, and hopefully this will help you find the ones that are really worth focusing your energy on. Although a lot of you guys deep down, you probably already know the ones that are worth focusing on. We usually always have one that we're on because we just feel pressured to be there. But this is our permission slip to just ignore that and just do what's actually relevant for you. So now that you've got that in the back of your mind, we are going to run through our do's and don'ts of social media. And honestly, these apply to absolutely any platform. It doesn't matter what it is, the same principles kind of apply. So we'll jump into that now. And Hayley, I might get you to kick off with this one for us.
Yeah, sure. So our first don't is don't be too formal on social media. So tailor your tone to the platform. So it's important to keep your brand voice in mind when you're writing on your social media posts. The jargon and filler words will lose people. So you don't have to sacrifice your brand's personality, but you do have to adapt the tone. So make it punchy, but not yawn-inducing. So our hot tips for this is try reading your posts out loud and imagine you're having a coffee with a friend. So is that the language that you would actually use to explain the concept, and try to keep it really simple and conversational. And the best way to actually fit in on a platform is simply spend some time there and get a good feel for it. So this is actually your excuse to scroll through the platforms and actually spend some time on social media, because you'll get a real feel for what is actually trending, and you'll get a feel for what people actually want to engage with just by looking at the comments and what people are actually interested in. So take note of the content that you yourself are actually interacting with and what makes it appealing to you yourself. So we have a little activity for you here. So pull up your last post and imagine that you're scrolling past it in your very own feed. And would you actually stop and read it? Or does it sound a little bit stuffy and maybe a little bit too long? So have a little bit of an audit of your own post and have a think about, if you were somebody else reading your post, would you actually stop and read it yourself?
I'm doing this as well with our stuff. And I would definitely stop. Yeah, this is just a good one to do every now and again as well, and just help really keep you on track.
Yeah.
We'd love to know in the chat what you guys thought, whether would you stop for your own post or not. Hey, you never know, Verity. Maybe your ideal clients do love the way you explain contracts and the way you talk to them about it.
Yeah. I think you could probably think about it as, have you ever had a conversation with someone in person and watched their eyes glaze over because you've realized you've lost them? And I think you probably have to think about, if you've had that same conversation in person, you can picture them doing that on social media too. But if you've seen that, you've had that conversation in person, and you know that they've gotten really excited with you because they can feel your passion and they can feel your energy, and take that passion and that energy turn that into words into a post. So if you can sort of use the words to capture that energy and that passion, then you're going to have a really excitable post, and you're going to have something that people are going to want to stop scrolling, and they're going to want to read.
And I just quickly add to that, I love that point you made, Hayley. And I think too, when you are really passionate about something, try video as well, because if you're really excited and passionate, that will come across really well in video, and your audience will love that. So many good comments. Awesome. We'll jump through to the next slide, and then we'll come back to those as well, guys. I love this. Cool. So our next one kind of ties into this, but try not to waffle. So our next don't waffle, try to get to the point. So we know you probably, again, when you're really excited about something, like Verity's excited about her contracts, you could probably write 10,000 words about it. You could write about it all day because you love it so much. Across most platforms, short and sweet does tend to work best. Sometimes, for example, Instagram is one of our main platforms, and we do love to write the occasional long caption on there, but they are few and far between. Typically, like we were saying, it's all about getting people to stop scrolling at the end of the day. So the quicker you can get that message across really efficiently, the better. And even if you do have something, say it's a topic that does require a bit of explaining, and it does require a bit of a lengthier kind of post, even just getting across the key details in that very first line or your headline on your blog or whatever it might be, just make sure that really captures people. Otherwise you can lose them. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's just something that we can often forget about when we get carried away with writing something. So yeah, just taking a complex issue or something that's quite detailed and being able to distill it down and explain it in a really simple way is literally one of the best ways that you can really cut through to your clients. So hot tip on this, and I kind of gave it away just before, but if you do start to write something, say you intend it to just be a social media caption, but it doesn't end up being quite long, just take it and turn it into a blog post, or jump on video and make like a little IGTV or a YouTube video out of it instead. That can work really well for those more in-depth and informative pieces. And just remember your purpose too. So with social media, I mean, you're not there to give everyone 100% of your knowledge and 100% of the value. You're really just giving them enough to pique their interest and help them recognize why something is important. And then they can come to you for the full story, right? When they work with you. So don't feel like you have to give everyone 100% of the story whenever you talk about a topic. It's just enough to get the conversation started. So hopefully that makes sense and hopefully that helps. Awesome. So I'll jump to the next slide now, which Hayley is going to run us through.
So just to answer some of the comments in the chat. So Key Legal, where you said, I haven't ventured into the social media world for marketing yet. I was trying to avoid it, but it seems to be the way to go. Again, it just comes back to where your ideal client's hanging out. If you know that they are on social media, then you may need to. But in saying that, if you're finding that you are managing to attract clients without social media, you may not need to. It's great to have brand awareness and a social presence just for social proof and a way for them to contact you as an extra form of communication, and just looking for that extra evidence that you are, an identifiable business, of someone that's relatable and that they can, reach out to if they need to. But it's not crucial if you're finding that you're able to run your business successfully without social media. You don't need to, if it's just going to add a lot of extra stress and a lot of extra work onto your plate. But if you have the means, you can always outsource it to somebody else. There are lots of great VAs that also specialize in social media management who can take all of the thoughts and everything in your brain and turn it into social media content for you that could manage that side of things for you. So you don't actually have to do it all yourself. So that's a solution, hopefully, to that problem for you. Okay, so the next slide is don't be someone else and do adapt ideas to fit your brand. So there's a lot of pressure to do that on social media. It's great to look at other brands for inspiration, but don't feel like you need to do something just because others are, and it needs to feel right for you. So that kind of follows on nicely for what we were saying, is that just because everyone else is doing something, or just because everyone else has social media, it doesn't mean you have to do it. Just do it because it feels right for you and it suits your brand. And a really hot tip for that one as well is get clear on your brand values and your point of difference, and only spend time on your content that fits with these. So remember to keep clear on your why behind your post. So what purpose does this serve? So a really great example of that is somebody gave an example of this really funny lawyer that is on TikTok. And that's fantastic. Like, that's anyone who can use their humor to educate an audience on a platform of people who may not have been able to relate to that industry before, all the power to them. But if you're not someone who can use humor in that way, don't feel compelled to have to push yourself to do something just because you've seen somebody else doing it. If it's not something you feel comfortable doing, don't do it. Just still stay comfortable doing the things that you know you do well. Don't feel like you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone to do something that you're not familiar with and something that you're not, that's not in your expertise, because it will show through. People will be able to see that you're uncomfortable, and people will be able to see that it's not something that comes naturally to you. And you're much better off just sticking to the things that you're good at and that you actually enjoy doing. Because if you hate doing it, at the end of the day, you're not going to actually get anything out of it, and you're not going to reap the rewards from it. So you're much better off just being yourself, and you'll actually see that you'll start getting the rewards come through from that as well.
That is so right. Yeah, totally agree. So next one we want to share as well is try to stay away from using any scare tactics. So we know no one here probably does this, but we do see it a lot, so it's worth mentioning. Try to provide value instead. So we try to say, give people that positive reinforcement for wanting to work with you, not negative reinforcement. So you don't want them to be pushed to inquire or pushed to want to work with you because they're scared of what will happen if they don't, but make them actually feel good about that opportunity and make them want to do that and make it a positive thing. So it can feel really tempting to use these fear appeals when you're trying to explain how important something is and you're trying to get people to listen up. And this can work sometimes in very small doses, but on social media, this is a place where you're going to be much better off if you can make people feel good and feel excited about connecting and working with you. So if you can use that positive reinforcement, you will see much better results. And, you know, one way we see a lot of lawyers do this really well is just focusing on telling people and informing people about those proactive things that they can do. And Riz is someone that does a really good job of this, and she'll share more about that later, I'm sure. But if I could distill that down, I would just say, when you are writing something, you know, say you are trying to really stress the importance of having the right contracts in place or following this law or whatever it might be, really try to put the spotlight on, hey, here's the benefits of doing these things, rather than always just talking about, hey, here's what's going to happen to you if you don't do this. In small doses, it's fine, but just try to focus on those positives and make people feel good about working with you, and that's going to get you a lot further. Because the thing about fear appeals, it will work on some people, but other people will just respond by putting their head in the sand, and that doesn't help you either. So hopefully this tip helps as well. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is don't post and ghost. So do engage and interact. Posting is great content, and it's only half of the work when it comes to building a great social media presence for your brand. So in order to make genuine connections and be remembered, you'll need to make a consistent effort to engage. So when we say don't post and ghost, we mean don't just post and then jump off the platform and think that your work is done. You do actually need to spend time engaging with your social media audience, and you need to spend time actually building your community and getting to know the people that you're interacting with on your platforms. And the reason for that is that you need to actually make them have a reason to care about your brand. You need to actually get to know them and build relationships with them. Otherwise, you're just another person posting on social media and they have no reason to actually want to care about your brand. So some of the tips we've got for that is follow relevant industry peers, potential clients, and any valuable connections on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can actually follow relevant hashtags as well. So the reason you might want to follow relevant hashtags is that your ideal audience might be using them. And then that will mean that they'll pop up in your feed and you have an instant interaction where you can actually start engaging with them and following them. So if you aim to spend about 15 to 20 minutes a day interacting with them and leaving genuine comments on these posts, you can actually start to build up your engagement, and you can start to build up that community and interaction with them as well. So ideally, this period of time of engagement is to coincide with when your posts are scheduled to go out, and that helps you sort of boost your position in the algorithm as well. And another little tip there is, if it helps you, if you actually schedule your posts what you can do is if you set it to manually post, you can get a notification sent to your phone that your post is due to go out, and you can spend 15 minutes interacting before your post actually goes out, schedule the post to go out, and then spend another 15 minutes if you have the time engaging afterwards. And that'll just help your post get the maximum reach it can get. And then continue following and interacting with relevant accounts as you discover them as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so important. I think it's easy to forget this sometimes because you put so much effort into the post, but then it's like, our work is not done. So yeah, that's really important. Cool. So off the back of that too, another one is don't post just for the sake of it. So you will hear us talk about how it's important to, you know, yes, you should be consistent, and yes, you should be as active as you can. But also if you just don't have anything fun or exciting or interesting to say, don't feel like you have to post just because. Don't feel like, oh, I haven't posted for a while, I should put something up. Wait until you have something really juicy to actually share, okay? Otherwise, you can shoot yourself in the foot. So, and off the back of that too, you know, I think there's a lot of focus on social media around how things look. But really, I would say a post that's really valuable and newsworthy, that is so much more valuable, and that is going to perform so much better than something that is just looks nice, but it has no substance behind it. So I think that's really, really important. If you can make a post that's visually appealing and really valuable, then that's definitely a winner, but always put the value as your number one priority. And don't get like, oh, this photo doesn't look perfectly edited or whatever. Don't let that get in the way of you putting something up if you know that your audience is really going to love to see it. So like Haley was just saying, one really good way to find topical things to talk about and news that you can share is like just, again, follow those relevant hashtags. And certainly on Instagram and LinkedIn, I know that you're able to do that. And I'm sure Twitter as well. You know, follow those relevant hashtags so that when things happen in your industry, you're the first to know about them, and then you can put in your 2 cents and get in on the conversation as well. And you never know, for your followers, this might be the first time they've heard about something, so they're going to love you for sharing that with them. Another thing you can do as well is set up Google Alerts. So if you just look up Google Alerts, it's a free tool from Google if you hadn't guessed, and you can just put in keywords and say, whenever someone talks about this on the internet, I want you to send me a link. So you do want to keep it a little bit specific, but you might put in, say, the name of your firm, or something really specific to your industry, or if there's something that you're following and you want to always get the latest news about it, pop those in as alerts for yourself, and then you can choose like a frequency of emails to actually get straight to your inbox, so you'll get all that news, and then you can then share that with your audience and give them heaps of value because you've done the hard work of going and getting that information for them. Yeah, so Melissa was just saying some great advice she got was to be interesting, but also be interested. Yes, you have to give if you want to receive. It's really a two-way thing. So love that. Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so don't get writer's block and do use content pillars. So content pillars are central themes that all of your content fits into. So you should aim to put in place about 3 to 5 content pillars and stick to them. So good content pillars will not only help you keep your content relevant, but they'll help you overcome writer's block. So a hot tip for this is content pillars might look a little something like this, but you can tailor them to your own brand and your goals. So there'll be something like behind the scenes and team culture. There'll be educational and industry news, inspirational ideas, promotional offers, and entertainment and humor. So we recommend laying them out into like a kind of like a checkerboard view so that you can kind of see how to balance them out appropriately so that you're not just posting promotional after promotional post, and you can kind of just layer them out nicely so that you've got a really good balance of posts and you can make sure that people actually care about the type of content that you're posting, and that when people see the behind the scenes, they get to know who you are a little bit more, they learn a little bit more about your industry with your educational posts, they feel inspired about the ideas that you're sharing, and then by the time you actually hit them with a promotional post, they already know a lot about your business, they know who you are, and they're actually interested in taking you up on that offer. So that's the whole idea around the content pillars, is that you're sort of warming them up for the things that you're going to sell them, and you're not just cold selling them something that they're not interested in and they don't know anything about.
Love your excitement, Joyce. Joyce says loves content pillars, will use it. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, they're just, not only does it make your content more strategic, but it just makes your job a lot easier to come up with ideas as well. So
rather than trying to think of all of these ideas, once you've got your content pillars, it just makes life so much easier to think of things to post.
Totally. Yes. Good little hack. Awesome. So we've done it, guys. That's all our do's and don'ts. Hopefully we didn't run through that too quickly. So if there's anything you're stuck on, please just jump in the chat and let us know. We can come back and reiterate. What I wanted to share with you now, though, before we totally overwhelm anyone with, too much of that background info, is I did want to jump into like one real world case study from a friend of ours, Alison from QSAC & Co. So if you guys would love another example, someone you can go follow. We've already had some great suggestions in the chat here. You can definitely find Alison on LinkedIn and also on Clubhouse as well. She's doing a really great job there. She is really nailing it with social media, and particularly on LinkedIn, she's been doing really, really well. And she does all of her posts herself. We did help her with some initial guidance and kind of strategy, but honestly, she's just taken that and run with it. And huge credit to her, like she does such a good job. So this is really what I was talking about just then too, with the keeping on top of news and topical things that are happening, right? So this is her top post of all time. It was just posted through her personal LinkedIn profile, and it's been seen over 120,000 times, which is just nuts, and if you look at that engagement, all these reactions, and more importantly, almost 200 comments. So people were really interested in what she had to say here. And as you can see, it's not a pretty picture, it's not some fancy video, it's not a huge long caption. It's so simple, but it's just interesting and topical and really relevant to her audience, which is why it worked. So she's a maritime lawyer. Okay, so containerized shipping, that's her jam. And, she's always keeping across what's happening in the news. So she shared when this particular incident happened. She used some relevant hashtags to help get it out to people. But it just really took off from there because she was keeping her audience informed about something that had happened. So why Alison gets it right and why social media works really well for her. She uses her LinkedIn, she uses her personal profile and her LinkedIn company page to post from. So both really valuable for different reasons, but like Hayley kind of touched on earlier, it can be a little bit easier to get reach from your personal profile, especially if you were to start a company page from scratch. You make use of your personal profile because all of the people you're connected with are going to see those posts, and you probably just find it's a lot easier to kind of get traction. Like I was saying, she's always across the latest news, so that helps her massively because she can just be so relevant with what she's sharing. And she's really engaged. So like I was saying before, she just follows these do's and don'ts perfectly. So she doesn't post and ghost. She actually spends a bit of time genuinely leaving comments and giving her 2 cents on things and supporting others as well. And that all comes back to her tenfold. And another really good thing that she does is she just uses social media as one part of her marketing mix. So another thing we want to share today is that, social media is great, it's really powerful, but it can't do everything, and it's not the be all and end all either. It's really just, one kind of piece of your marketing puzzle. So Alison also really heavily uses, appearances in media, print or sometimes TV as well. And she's pretty active on Clubhouse as well. She's really great at speaking and engaging people through voice. So those are things that work really well for her. That doesn't mean you need to do those things. You might have different strengths and you might choose, different channels to focus on. But again, try to have a bit of a mix and a bit of a variety, and you'll do really well. So that's just one example I wanted to share. And, if you go look up Alison Cusack or Cusack & Co on LinkedIn or Clubhouse, you can see what she's doing and you can have a stalk and get some more inspiration there. But just to leave you guys with some tips on how you can apply this for yourself. So yeah, like we're saying, post from your personal profile where it's appropriate, and make sure that in your LinkedIn headline, if your purpose is getting your firm's brand out there, make sure the name of your firm is in your headline. Follow those relevant hashtags once again. So this is kind of how it will help you as well. So when you follow relevant hashtags, not only is that content going to pop up in your newsfeed, but what will actually happen is you'll get, if something really interesting is happening, I know definitely for LinkedIn, it'll give you a notification like this saying, hey, there's a trending post under maritime, you should respond to this and get in on the conversation. So that just makes it so easy for you. Like LinkedIn's literally going to tell you when you need to jump in and participate. So that's really helpful. Don't forget to spend some time on engagement, like we said, and get involved and collaborate with people where possible as well. So this is another thing that Alison does really well. She's always working with others, even across different industries. But just the more you can get yourself out there in front of the right people, that's really valuable. Cool. So we're definitely running on time. So that's awesome. What we'll do now is, if anyone, again, if you have any questions, keep dropping them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll probably get back to you at the end. We have allowed a little bit of time for that, but I would love to hand over to Riz from Found Legal now to run through her real world example with you, and then we'll hear from Adriana as well. So Riz, were you ready to jump on and share your presentation?
So the do's and don'ts of social media, and I guess my perspective of it. So another intro, if you like. So my name's Riz. I've been a lawyer for about 16 years. Oh my goodness. And I've also been an e-commerce entrepreneur for about 10 years. I started an e-commerce business when I was pregnant with my second child. Crazy, I know, but I loved it and all the things I learned from it as well. And my passion basically lies in helping like-minded self-starters and build their empire basically. And now, with Find, I'm doing what I absolutely love pretty much every single day. And the best thing is helping people and their businesses basically grow and succeed. And I absolutely adore doing that, waking up every day and looking forward with excitement rather than trepidation. Now, this is all about socials, and I think socials are very important investment in your law firm. It should actually be seen as another opportunity to build brand awareness, nurture relationships, drive website traffic, and encourage your clients to get in touch and ultimately work with you. And I've done that in particular with my socials, my Instagram in particular, I guess. So I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have LinkedIn, and you're probably sitting there thinking, oh, how do you give the love to all of that? Well, it's not easy, but majority of my love goes on Instagram, because I identified over time when I first started out that that's where most of my clients lived. And so that's where most of my engagement happens, most of my referrals happen, and most of my clients come through via DMs as well. So, yes, you can have other platforms, but pick the one that where your clients live is essentially what I've done. Yes, you can have other platforms, but don't go after all of them. There's too many, and Katie's mentioned and listed like about 10, I think. There's just too many of them. You can't do and focus on all and do a good job on all of them. If you try and focus, you're spreading yourselves too thin, and it's stressful. There's a lot of work involved just in managing one platform and focusing on one platform, let alone several. Another important fact is for me, and what I've learned is know who you are. You need to know who you are and what you represent before you can work out who your ideal client is. And once you determine those things, that will help you determine which platform you should focus on. Craft your unique voice and keep it consistent. Don't ever quote case law or legislation. Clients don't care. They really don't give a shit. Okay. They just want their questions answered. They just want to know yes or no, basically. Can this happen? Can we do this? Or can't we? Why can't we? You know, they don't want to be quoted section X of, you know, the Corps Act or something. The other tip I have is use your social media presence to establish yourself as an authority in your chosen area. Don't try to be everything to everyone. It's impossible. You know, it's so my focus is creatives, and you know, helping them start and scale their businesses online, and that's my key focus. That doesn't mean to say I don't get clients who are not creatives. I do, but my focus is creatives, and because I focused in that way, then my socials, my content is very targeted, and so are my adverts when I use adverts as well. And that's important because adverts cost money, and if you're trying to please and target everyone, you're going to be wasting a lot of dollars. Consistency, and I know Katie's kind of talked about this as well, but your content needs a strategy behind it. You know, if you don't have that, you're posting random shit and it's not going to work. So you need to figure out how often you will post, and that can be something you will work out over time by testing. What images or graphics will accompany your captions? You know, have a think about that. What kind of, you know, how long and detailed will they be? Will your tiles all work together nicely? This is talking about Instagram in particular, by the way. Does your page look like it has been carefully curated? Nobody likes sloppy squares, right? But that doesn't mean you have to be picture perfect, but whatever you do, be consistent with it. Okay, be consistent with it, and test things out and see how that works until you find what works for you as well. And there's no harm in doing that either. But initial strategy is pretty important, and then arguably the most important part, social media isn't just about making your page look pretty. And I must admit, my page does look damn pretty. It's also about engaging with your audience, okay? In the comments, on your posts, as well as theirs. Don't just stick up a post and then, you know, hope for engagement. You've got to go out there and engage, whether that's on your own post, whether that is on other people's posts. And don't randomly, you know, scroll. Oh yeah, I'll like this one. You've got to be intentional with and genuine about what you're liking and commenting on. Follow like-minded people you want to network with and build relationships with, as well as your dream clients. Be authentic and make real connections. That's what I meant about, you know, don't randomly post a comment on somebody's post and you're not really that interested in it. You need to be genuine. And look, don't only follow or engage with other law firms. They're not your ideal clients. They may give you work, they might refer work to you. Don't just focus on them. Follow, you know, your dream clients, you know, network as well. Don't just follow law firms. So I've kind of threaded through this, you know, about what I do as well. And so what about Find? Well, we've been consistent. So all the things that Katie and Haley have been talking about, we've tried to do within what we do for Find, and that is be consistent. We provide value. We try to avoid being waffly, although I do have a tendency to. We've stayed on brand. We've grown our followers to 4,000 plus. Look, it's a vanity metric, but it's useful. And social media has been the biggest driver of our client inquiries, which have then led to word of mouth referrals as well. And it allows us to engage with our followers and demonstrate to them why they want to work with us. Okay, we don't tell them work with us. we want to engage them so that they want to work with us. So go into a couple of things there, you know, providing the value. So the value has been through sharing content that deals with topics that I know are pain points for clients, and little business and legal tips, not just all legal, providing value through blog articles, providing value through, you know, downloadable ebooks or checklists as well that are practical and useful. And so what that has done is a couple of things. One is it's built my authority and Found's authority for that area of business, excuse me. It has also shown us to be somebody they want to engage with and follow, because if we're giving those things away for free, what can we be like if they pay us, you know? And it's also built trust as well. And that's really, really important. So if you have any questions, DM me at Found Legal. And I'm happy to take on any questions here as well. And thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much, Riz. That was amazing. And we actually personally found Riz originally through Instagram, I think, as well. So it does work. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, if anyone has questions for Riz, feel free to just keep them coming in the chat and the Q&A, and we will get to them very soon. I'll hand over to Adriana now if you want to share your examples with everyone as well.
Okay, so already know who I am, guys. So let's just get right into it. Oops, okay, this isn't working.
You just click.
Yeah, oh, here we go. It's on. Okay, so first of all, I guess social media has really only just become, in the last couple of years, it's stopped being a dirty word amongst law firms, to be entirely honest, particularly in the mid-tier to the larger law firm size. I guess I'm just going to run through some do's and don'ts very quickly. We don't have too much time left, but what I do want to do is also run you through some statistics, because as lawyers or people who work for lawyers, we deal in fact and not fiction, right? So we like to back up what we're doing with some facts as well. The first thing I would recommend is that you make sure that your social media policy is up to date, that you actually do have one. There are some law firms that don't even have one. The other thing about your social media policy is that often it will only look at what your employers or subcontractors can say about the firm on social media. There's a very grey area as well, which is when you have an employee that has their own Facebook page and they may make a disparaging comment about the Premier, for example. Now, that may pose a bit of a problem for us if half of our clients are state-based government agencies. Now, this area is a little difficult because we can't really be telling our staff what to say or do on their own personal profiles, I would imagine, but LinkedIn's a little different, but particularly on an Instagram or a Facebook page. But you may want to have that discussion internally just to get an understanding amongst the staff that, look, there are repercussions to some of your posts and we don't want any business fallout as a result of it. Also, don't forget disclaimers. You're not providing legal advice. You need to make that very clear on your social media posts. Now, the next do from our perspective, now remember this is just based on what we've experienced here, is focusing on video content. Now, why focus on video? Well, we know that 49% more videos, 49% more views occur on social media through video, which is always a fabulous thing. We also know that 65% of people go to YouTube to find resolutions to their problems or answers to their questions. So they're very much engaged with video. We also know that by 2022, which is not far away, that around 81% of consumer internet traffic will be video driven. So it's all starting to gear towards video. Now, we had a bit of an idea about this prior to the pandemic here at Home and Web. So what we did was we'd been thinking for a long time about starting a video series where we interview clients, specialists, lawyers, whoever it might be, on various topics of interest. We never went ahead with it because I think there was a bit of a perfectionistic attitude about doing it and making sure it looked perfect and super professional, and the budgets are really high for that kind of thing. So once the pandemic hit and everyone was quite comfortable about Zooming in from home and in their living rooms and things like that, we took that as an opportunity to launch our legal lockdown video series. We thought we'd have around 200 views. We ended up with around 8,500 collective views, which was unprecedented for us. It was great. We set a series together where we interviewed not only experts in the field, but we used it as a forum to really promote the expertise of our lawyers. What that resulted in was a significant ROI. So what happens is in 2015, only 33% of marketers could attribute ROI to social media and video. Last year, that jumped up to 87%. So it's really important that you start thinking about other ways of getting your return in terms of your social media marketing. A few things to note about doing video content. One is that videos under 2 minutes get the highest engagement. A little difficult for us to do in our space, but we did tend to keep it down to 4 to 5 minutes where we could. The other thing to note is that 85% of videos are watched without sound, particularly on LinkedIn. So you must use captions. Very different on Instagram. Don't need captions on Instagram. For some reason, everybody just listens to the videos on Instagram as opposed to other platforms. Okay, so audience segmentation. Now, interestingly, this has been covered by the other speakers, but for us, we find that largely LinkedIn is where our audience sits, and we focus on LinkedIn. We really don't focus on Instagram or on Facebook. We do a lot of business to business that doesn't really engage on those platforms with us at this stage. That may change in the future. Sharing content where appropriate. I see some people, some lawyers that just constantly share content. You don't want to be being a bit of a pest. You want to be very careful about what you're sharing. Make sure that it's relevant to your audience. Please don't get too dogmatic about your views about certain things. It does turn people away to some extent, but just be very careful about the content that you're sharing. Keep your branding and messaging consistent. So your logo, your website, all your colors and logos have to be the same across every single platform. So effectively keep your logo, your brand messaging, your boilerplate copy, everything has to be the same, because what you want your social media platforms to do is to enhance your brand, not dilute your brand. What people aren't doing enough of, I think, is social media audits. You need to stay on top of what the lawyers within your firm are doing on their personal profiles on LinkedIn. Some of them are just not active enough. Have a quick look around, see what's happening, who's not posting often enough, and go and have a chat with them. They're really, as the other panelists have said, LinkedIn very much is a great forum to boost your brand profile, your personal brand profile. So we always find that we do social media audits regularly across the firm to make sure everyone's active. Less public, more private interactions. What does that mean? What we're actually finding is that people are kind of moving back and away from public forums to more private forums. So what they want, closed groups, they like the exclusivity of it. So for example, if you have an employment law team, you might want to set up a special LinkedIn group around employment law for HR professionals. People like to engage on a more sort of personal, more private level to share issues that they have around their work. And we find that these private interactions are starting to gain a lot more momentum than posting just underneath the initial public post. Again, like everyone else said, plan your content. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We personally like to use Hootsuite. We did that over the Christmas break. We were closed for 2 weeks. It didn't even look like we were closed at all because we consistently posted over that period. And we had set up all our posts earlier and in good time. The final do is be brave, okay? So I know it can get really challenging when you're in a law firm to try new things, but I do urge you to do that. We did a lead generation program. For some of you that don't know what lead gen is, we did it through LinkedIn. We set up a group of professionals that fell within our brief, did some content for them, and it went out to market, and we got a lot of leads through that. Now, that's fantastic. And they're great leads, quality leads. But if you do not follow them up, or if someone in your firm does not follow them up, you have literally wasted thousands of dollars on that whole process, not worth your money or your time. So prior to starting a lead gen project, you really need to make sure that the lawyers are fully backing the project, that they're prepared to go out with you as a business development person or someone else to really engage with the people that have asked for coffees, that have asked for to make contact. Okay, quickly on the don'ts, don't ignore Twitter like we've been told already. But the thing is, the reason why I say don't ignore Twitter is because you'll find a lot of journalists use Twitter. And if you want your lawyers quoted in newspapers and magazines, you've got to start using Twitter. Now, I don't know what the longevity of Twitter is moving into the future. It is starting to lose a lot of traction, but at this point in time, I probably wouldn't put it on the back burner as yet. Again, we've discussed vanity metrics. Don't focus on them, of course, but do be careful with them because you can get caught up in the 4,000 followers, as Riz said. I'm sure Riz she's very astute, so she would have already gone through and checked exactly who these followers are and done all her breakdowns and her auditing on that, but don't just follow the vanity metrics. Don't be afraid to alter course, okay? So once you've got back all your feedback and you've seen who all your followers are and you've done all your breakdown, you may need to pivot. You've got to be open to pivoting. Now, we saw this happen with our legal lockdown series. Because nobody was doing videos like we were when lockdown first started, we had thousands and thousands of views. By the time we were about to launch our second series, there was complete and utter saturation on LinkedIn of videos. So we went ahead and launched our first video for series 2, and we had about half the views. So at that point, I yanked it. I'm just not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste the lawyer's time in doing this particular type of content where I can see that we're not going to get the traction that we originally did due to saturation. So then again, you have to go back to your audit. Audit, check what's happening. Don't just blanketly put out some content out there. Don't get too personal. I've said that before. It's not great. Don't share advice. You just want to tease them. You want to send out a bit of a teaser to get them in to call you and say, look, I'm really concerned. What can you advise me here? And then bring them on board as a client. I say don't use social media speak, but that's because of our client base. We don't use emojis when we post. Some of you can because you have a completely different client base to us, but for us, it doesn't work. So be very careful of who your client base is. When I say don't forget to use relevant sector hashtags, don't just assume that this hashtag will work for this particular sector. You need to go through, have a look, check what people in your sector are hashtagging, and then use those hashtags. Very, very important step because otherwise you're just going to miss your whole demographic. Don't forget to include your clients in your strategy. So again, when we did lockdown, we interviewed a lot of clients, brought them in, used it as a proper collaboration project. You might also want to think very carefully about sharing their content as well where relevant. You're showing clients again that they're more than just a lawyer, you're in a true partnership with them. And finally, don't forget your overall strategy. If, like the girls said, Caitlin and Hayley, if your strategy is to focus just on maintaining your client base for that particular year, don't go spending money on a lead gen program. That's a waste of money because that's bringing in new clients. You must make sure that the social media strategy is focused on your current strategy. If you're looking at building your insurance practice, look at building your social media strategy more effectively in that space than maybe your corporate practice, because that's already booming. So think about where you need to invest your time and your lawyer's time. And I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Social media, it's the great equalizer. You can be a huge firm, you can be a tiny one-man band, but if you get your social media right, I think that it's one of the most incredible ways that you can make an effect to your bottom line. And that's it from me, guys.
Thank you, Adriana. That was awesome. And I love that bit you said at the end, because yeah, it's accessible. Everyone can use it. And for the most part, besides the advertising part, a lot of it is free. So I love that. Thank you so much. All right.
Value.
Sorry?
So much value. That was insane.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, totally. Okay. We have about 10 minutes left, which is awesome. So what I might do, guys, there's a few questions we still have to get back to. But we really wanted to leave you guys with some content prompts to get you thinking and leave today with some ideas on some posts that you could share for yourself. So I'll just pop these up on screen now. They're pretty self-explanatory anyway. So I'll leave you guys with these. Hopefully you can see that now. These are just some content prompts for you. So if you guys feel pretty across everything I've already covered today, feel free to use the last 10 minutes to kind of work through these, pop down some notes, and start thinking of some content ideas that you could start to share. And yeah, we'll just work through the Q&As in these last few minutes as well. So if we haven't answered you yet, we're getting to you now. There's a really good question here that might potentially be better for Riz or Adriana to answer. I'm going to throw you guys in the deep end. But Verity asks, lawyers often want to try and solve every problem and cover every possible issue. So is there any tips on how we can make bite-sized content interesting and useful without adding conditions apply to everything? And I think, Adriana, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but did you guys have any examples of?
Yeah, I was just typing in a response there as well. But I think you can do almost like a teaser to say a blog article. So your caption, your post can mention the topic at a high level with some enough interest to generate a curiosity around, well, what does the rest of the article say? Because that sounds so interesting. I'm just pulling up an example. If you just give me 1 second, I should have had this open as well. So I just wanted to, I should have maybe done that. And I can share the screen as well so you can see what I'm talking about as well. So if you give me 2 seconds, is it okay if I share the screen?
Yeah, go for it. I'll just stop my share.
Just so that everyone can get kind of a visual as well. So I think it's best to show it in this way. So you'll see I have all my posts around business tips, a kind of similar structure with the business tip at the top. And by having the heading, how to have, for example, a legally legit collab. So that sort of draws the attention straight away with the big heading, and then there's brief text on the image itself as well. If you're entering into a business relationship, etc., a contract, getting a contract is the smartest place to think about, basically. So it draws them in. They then go to the comment that I have in the caption as part of the post, and it goes into a bit more detail if the answer is yes. And it's very kind of, but remember, this is my style for my audience. This tone of voice, etc., suits my audience. So something what Adriana said, just make sure what your tone and style suits your audience. So this suits my audience. And then here I start talking a little bit about, you know, if you're entering into a business relationship or a collab, getting in a contract is important. It's common sense, it's practical, it's important, and making that point. And then talking about a couple of things that might be important as part of that. So who owns the IP? What about the risks? Who's doing what? Who's paying what, etc. And so none of that is legal advice as such. It's practical, is put together and shared in a practical way without needing for me to add you know, a big, huge disclaimer and conditions apply to what I've just said, and then linking them to a more detailed blog. And the blog takes the same kind of tone and voice and approach as well. It takes them through the practical steps and talks them through things without giving advice. And at the same time, I'm sharing links to my templates, for example, or a link to booking a consult with me if they've got more questions. So by providing the content in that way, I'm not giving any kind of legal advice. I don't have to, you know, give the disclaimers in my Instagram. What I do though is in my blog, on my blog page, I do have a standard disclaimer there, but it's a very kind of friendly-ish disclaimer, you know, just saying everything here is general advice, not legal advice, but not in any of my socials. I don't need to do that due to the way I approach the content and how I provide that content. Hopefully, Verity, that answers your question. There's a few other legal tip ones as well, business tips that I have. And again, I take the approach of, you know, enticing them in to read. And then when they read it, then they go, maybe if there's a blog link to it, they go to the blog, or if it's a podcast, they go to the podcast, etc. And I find that to be very useful for my clients. And I know it's working if they've shared or tagged it a lot as well. What do I mean by that? I mean, let me see if I can do this. So here, if people have like saved it for themselves to read later, that means I'm on the money. There's interest in what I'm writing. And over time, you will figure out which posts are doing better than others to decide more topics as well, and how to hone in on that. So I've done a lot of topics around copyright, around intellectual property in general, around trademarks, etc., but all bite-sized in manageable chunks without the need to put in huge conditions and disclaimers. And I hope that answers the question. I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, so only a few more minutes to go. So if there are any last minute questions, we'll just reply to those now. But yeah, thanks for all your awesome feedback in the chat as well, everyone. That's great. So there's a good question here. So with everyone using video on LinkedIn, etc., I'm getting quite exhausted. I don't watch the videos. Yeah, it's just too much. Look at me and it's quite irritating. What's the right balance? So yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. I would just say if you're worried that your content is going to feel like that to people, a way to get around that is just when you actually create something and put something together, just remember that, yeah, it's not about you. You're just there to help someone else. And the more you can keep that top of mind and just think like, yeah, at the end of the day, you're there to serve and to help someone else with information that's valuable or interesting or entertaining to them. And you actually really, your job is not necessarily to be there promoting yourself. That's just a byproduct of you creating a really great video, right? They're going to remember you and know who you are. So just come at it from the angle of, I know I've got something really helpful to share. I'm just going to put it out there in a helpful way, and it will kind of sort itself out. So I suppose that's probably the best advice I can give. I don't know if anyone has something to add to that.
I think, Caitlin, I think it's more around what you are actually sharing, and if what, you know, you're the first to discuss the effects of some new case, the repercussions of a new case, you're the very first person to do it. You do it in a very engaging way. You're easy to listen to. I think that will be okay. It's just that there's so much repetition. People are doing it too late. you know, if you become known for being the person that's releasing video content that is really interesting, very thought leadership type content, that's where you're going to get the views. I know that someone like Chris Gray, who is a property expert, he's the Sky News property expert, we've used him as well in our videos. He himself gets an extraordinary number of views. And that's because he's actually saying what he really thinks is going to happen, what he thinks the property market is in for in the next month or two. So people want that kind of insight. And if that's what you're doing, you're more likely to get a lot of views. Just one thing about LinkedIn, because we use it a lot, obviously, as lawyers, but remember when you're looking at your stats, your impressions, they're really high normally, but just remember impressions are kind of like a billboard. It's when people are driving past and they just quickly just see your brand. And that's almost like a subliminal kind of messaging. You want to click through the engagement rate and just see who is clicking through and watching, because then that will tell you whether your content is hitting the right spot or not.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, well, I think we've come right up to time. So hopefully we got to everyone's questions, and thanks so much for everyone participating today. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there.